I am so excited to talk about this today. For those of you that have ever been in my live streams at twitch.tv/Lance with 2Ls, or ever heard me talk in person, or know me at all, you understand that I love movies. I watch as many movies as I can. I used to collect movies before streaming services were a thing. Whenever people were going out on Black Friday, I was buying stacks and stacks of marked down movies. I love them. I love everything about film. I absorb as much of it as I can. My favorite job that I've ever had, even more so than doing YouTube and comedy and streaming, I worked at a movie theater for $7.50 an hour, and I loved every second of it. It was by far the most fun that I have ever had at a job because all I did was talk about movies. It was awesome. I'd get to go watch them for free. I would, on the clock, get to go and walk around the theater and see people enjoying the movie, and I'd even get to watch some of it, and it was just, it was perfect. I love movies. On to what I'm talking about today, which is my favorite movie probably. It's kind of hard, but my favorite movie probably that nobody seems to know about. And it drives me nuts because nobody ever wants to talk about it with me because they haven't seen it. So I'm going to subject you to this because that's the glory of having a YouTube channel is you get to sit there and listen to me talk about the things that I love. Now, I know what you're thinking, Lance, shut the hell up. Just tell us what it is so we can get this over with. The movie is Lucky Number 11. Originally came out in 2006. It is a star-studded cast, okay? Like, I don't understand. So you have Josh Hartnett, who's played in some big films, but he, like, quit acting for a little bit, but I think he's coming back. But you have Josh Hartnett as the lead. You have Lucy Liu. You have Bruce Willis. You have Morgan Freeman. You have Sir Ben Kingsley. You have Stanley Tucci. Like, dude, the cast that they put together for this movie is insane. And the fact that nobody has seen it. Nobody's seen the movie. How? How has nobody seen it? It's this crime-based thriller, and without me explaining it, I'm just going to read the actual, like, synopsis of the film before we jump into me talking about it, okay? A case of mistaken identity puts a man named Slevin, who is played by Josh Hartnett, in the middle of a war between two rival New York crime lords, the rabbi, who's Ben Kingsley, and the boss, who's Morgan Freeman, while under the watchful eyes of Detective Brikowski, who is Stanley Tucci, and well-known assassin Good Cat, a.k.a. Mr. Good Cat, a.k.a. the bald king himself, Bruce Willis. Slevin must quickly devise a plan to save his skin before his luck runs out. That's the synopsis. You're like, oh shit, what the fuck? What's gonna happen in this movie? Just tell me. First of all, I want you to go watch it if you plan on watching this. Go watch it, go rent it, go do whatever, because I'm going to spoil the ever-loving shit out of this movie because it's the only way to properly talk about it and tell you why I think this movie's so good and entertaining. So it starts off with the credit sequence, right? And the credit sequence is already just kicking it off right. There's people dying already, and by like wild means, this guy dies to a baseball to the face, and you can't see who's killing everybody, but you're like, oh shit, somebody's dying already. We're 30 seconds in. What the hell? So then it fades in. There's a guy laying on a bench in an empty airline terminal. Bruce Willis wheels up in a wheelchair and just starts talking to this guy. He just starts telling him this crazy story about this guy back in the day who lost a bunch of money on a fixed horse race because he thought that his juiced up horse was going to win. Spoiler alert, the guy loses a bunch of money, and then his whole family gets killed.
I have a family.
Then Bruce Willis just casually asks him if he's heard of a Kansas City Shuffle. And then Bruce Willis breaks his fucking neck like a twig, just out of nowhere. Dude, it's the first like 13 minutes of the movie. You got people dying, you got gambling debts, you got this dude's family getting killed, you got Bruce Willis standing up out of his wheelchair, which is obviously fake, and just
Fuck. Shit. Jesus. Fuck shit, Jesus is right.
So then we're in an apartment, and Josh Hartnett, he's got this, like, smashed up face, and then enters the lovely Miss Lucy Liu. And Lucy Liu's character is very confused. She was expecting somebody named Nick Fisher, and she got Slevin. And this is where we learn that this isn't his apartment. He was staying with his friend Nick. When he got there, he wasn't there. And then Lucy goes into this whole detective mode, and she's talking about Columbo and things like that, and we'll get into that later. But essentially, nobody knows where Nick is. Lucy leaves to go to work after she borrows her sugar. A cup of sugar.
Where's your cup?
I said I came over to borrow a cup of sugar. If I brought a cup, then I would have said I came over to borrow sugar.
Touche.
And then we are left with Josh back in the apartment. Then these two dudes come to the door, and I've got to believe, I have to, in my heart of hearts, that they were based on the old Looney Tunes gangsters, you know, the really big dumb one and then the really small one with the hat that was like in charge. I have to believe that they're based on those two. But anyways, they're looking for, guess who? Nick Fisher. But they find Slevin Kalevra. They exchange some words, they talk shit to each other, and he punches him in the nose again. So the two wise guys take him to see the boss, which is none other than God himself, Morgan Freeman. And he tells Morgan Freeman, hey, I'm not Nick Fisher. You got the wrong guy. And then Morgan Freeman's like, hey, can you prove that? And he's like, well, what about the bookie? You know, the guy that I placed all these bets through. Maybe he can tell you. And then, boom, turns out the bookie is dead in a freezer. So the only person that could be like, hey, that's not Nick Fisher is dead. So now Slevin realizes he is in a mountain of trouble. He is up Schitt's Creek without a paddle, okay? His friend Nick owes all this money to this guy named the boss, and he's the one that's left holding the bag. But Morgan Freeman is like, hey, why don't you just do this favor for me instead? I want you to go kill this rival boss's son. The rival boss's name is the Rabbi, a.k.a. Sir Ben Kingsley. So then Slevin gets dropped off back at his apartment, or Nick Fisher's apartment, and two guys come knocking on the door. Surprise, surprise. He gets punched again. Surprise, surprise. And then they take him to go see the Rabbi. And it's kind of a very similar scene to when he met the boss. And that was just, hey, I'm not Nick Fisher. And then the Rabbi's like, well, you are Nick Fisher, and you're only unlucky because I'm lucky, and the lucky need to see the unlucky to know that they are lucky.
Lucky and nothing more than a frame of reference for the lucky Mr. Fisher. You are unlucky, so that I may know that I am not. Unfortunately, the lucky never realize they are lucky until it's too late. Take yourself, for instance. Yesterday you were better off than you are today, but it took today for you to realize it. But today has arrived, and it's too late, you see?
Like talks in these weird riddles all the time. You know, it's like, it's just this, he's all over the place. So then Slevin leaves and boom, Bruce Willis steps out. Mr. Good Cat steps out. And the Rabbi's like, hey, bro, that's not Nick Fisher. Like, I've dealt with people a long time. I'm a smart dude. That's not Nick Fisher. And Mr. Good Cat's like, hey, you let me handle that. And then you're like left scratching your head and you're like, well, if he knew, then why are they still telling him that he owes all this money if they knew it's not him? What's going on here? So now Slevin's back at the apartment with Lucy Liu, telling her the story of the Rabbi and the boss and all of this shit. 'Cause she's been at work this whole time, and she's like really interested in it. And you start to realize that Lucy Liu's character is a very intelligent character. She is able to put things together, and she's able to kind of piece together things that don't make a lot of sense. And then she asks him, hey, shouldn't you be a little more worried about all this? Because he's just cool as a cucumber the whole time. He's just, you know, he's stone-faced. He's cold-blooded. And Slevin just goes, I have ataraxia. That's his excuse. I have ataraxia.
Shouldn't you be a little more worried about all this?
I have ataraxia.
Ataraxia.
It's a condition characterized by freedom from worry or any other preoccupation, really.
So now we're getting a little bit more into the meat of everything. The rabbi's son is a gay man. So Mr. Goodcat is telling the boss that the way he's going to kill the rabbi's son is by having Slevin go on a date with him and then take him back to the apartment for a little bit of cheek clapping action, and then he's going to kill them both. Now, I know that this seems like it's all over the place, and that's because it is. This movie, the way it's edited, has all sorts of little tidbits of flashbacks kind of dropped in there, coupled with just these wild jump cuts from one location to another character, to another storyline. It is everywhere, but that's what makes it so interesting, and that's what makes it more interesting to watch more than one time. So now we're back, and Lucy thinks that she has solved the case. She thinks that she has figured it out. She's telling Slevin, hey, Nick did this to you. Nick screwed you. He invited you to come stay with him because he knew that that he had all these debts and these people looking for him, and then he gets rid of all of the people that can identify you. This is Nick's fault. And Slevin's like, oh man, I thought you knew your friends. Oh God, well, wow, woe is me. But again, he's stone-faced, he's cold, ice in his veins. And because there is ice in his veins, my man's dick is rock, okay? He is bricked up from here to the ceiling. So he asks her on a date. They go on the date. On the date, we find out that the reason why he asked her on a date to that particular restaurant is so that he could meet the rabbi's son. He talks to him. He sets up a date to come over and have dinner with him. And then enters Stanley Tucci, who corners him in a bathroom. Now, Stanley Tucci is a police officer. He's investigating this whole thing. He wants to know why this guy is the only one who's had access to the boss and the rabbi. Obviously, he's keeping an eye on things. Things are getting weird, okay? He knows about, just all of the horrible shit that these guys have done, and he's like asking him about it. And Slevin's like, hey,
I don't know.
So after Slevin's done securing his date with the rabbi's son, and he's done with all the crap with Stanley Tucci, he's absolutely enthralled with Lucy Liu's character. She's bright, she's beautiful, and so naturally, they go fuck and talk about James Bond. And it's pretty much what I've done every time I've had sex. So now, for the first time, you start to see Slevin actually feel something. Like, he's not quite so stone-faced. He's not quite so cold to everybody. He's not quite so sarcastic and deflecting of things. You can tell he really cares about Lucy Liu. There's a thing there. There's a spark. There's a chemistry, and they show this through a couple of really heartfelt scenes that I personally really enjoy. But he likes her. So now we jump to Slevin's date with the rabbi's son, and daddy, hold on to your nuts for this one. He kills the rabbi's son, okay? And then in walks Mr. Good Cat. What? Bruce Willis, the guy that's been pulling the strings, telling the boss about his plan, and it turns out they're working together. He's like, yo, go get the body. Like, go deal with this. I'll handle the other two, because there's two bodyguards on the other side of the wall. There's this cool little shootout scene. Then Slevin goes downstairs to grab the body, and who is in the body bag? The guy at the beginning of the movie that Bruce Willis broke his neck. So then Slevin takes the body upstairs, switches his watch with the dead guy's watch, and then they blow up the apartment, so that way the boss would think that Mr. Good Cat had done the plan that he was talking about. You do me, I do you type stuff. So then we get this crazy mashed up montage of all this stuff going on, but essentially what it boils down to is the boss and the rabbi end up in an office tied up and kidnapped. And they start to talk through things, and it starts to unravel the ball of yarn, so to speak. Turns out the people at the beginning of the movie that killed the loser's family, you guys remember the guy with the horse race? He thought he had a sure thing, lost all that money on the horse race. Turns out the people that killed him and his family were none other than the boss, the rabbi, and Stanley Tucci, the fucking cop that's investigating everything. Those three people were all in on it. Now, Mr. Good Cat, Bruce Willis's character, was supposed to kill the son, but he didn't. And who's the son? Fucking Slevin Kalevra, man. It's the son. The son of the gambler that lost all that money is Slevin. He's Slevin. He fucking, boom! Mr. Good Cat helps him get revenge on the people that killed his father and his family. Wait, what? Lance, how do we get here? What are you talking about, dude? There's so much. How we get from here to here? And I gotta tell you, you just gotta watch the movie. Even with the big spoiler here at the ending, there's so many little details that I left out. There's so much excellent writing. This movie is full of brilliant actors. That the editing of the movie even puts you in the fucking spin cycle, okay? Because you're like, wait, it jumped over here? What are we doing over here now? And then it cuts back, and then it cuts over here, and this person's having a flashback over here, and it is just chaos from start to finish, but it all comes together so freaking beautifully. And then whenever you rewatch it, I've seen this movie 30 million times, and when you rewatch it, you start to pick up on all the little breadcrumbs throughout the way, and it's done in such a way, it's so beautiful, and everything from the music to the visuals to the acting to the writing, it's all done so well. And I needed to talk about this in this video because nobody has seen this movie, and I needed to talk about it. I've been bottling it up since the first time that I saw this movie. Every time I bring it up, everybody's like, what is that? What movie? What are you talking about? What movie is that? And it's so amazing. So if you got it, watch it again. If you've never seen it, go watch it. And let me know what you thought, okay? If you have seen the movie and you thought it was terrible, it's okay to be wrong. I just think that this movie is so well put together from start to finish, especially because it's like an over-the-top, campy thriller crime thing. Like, it doesn't take itself too seriously, you know what I mean? But there's some real heavy shit in it. And the whole way, there's this very dry, sarcastic humor, and it's just done very, very well. It hits all the boxes for me, and I think this movie is definitely worth a watch for you. Thank you so much for watching and letting me talk about something that I'm very passionate about. I love you. Thank you, and I'll see you next time. Wait, what? Lance, how did we get here? What are you talking about, dude? There's so much. How we get from here to here? And I gotta tell you, you just gotta watch the movie.